Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. So today we're going to do another page in our watercolor journals. And just to go over supplies and materials, a lot of people always ask and like to hear that up front. 6x9 watercolor journal sketchbook. This is 140 pound cold press, 100% cotton paper in this particular journal. This is bao hong. There are links in the description of each video of the supplies I use daily. Not only the supplies that I'm using specifically in this video, but links to some other things that I use regularly that might not come up in every video as well. I am using today Princeton Velvet Touch, 2 round brushes, a size 10 and a size 4, plus this little detail brush. This is like a no-name brand kind of craft studio brush that I just happen to have. Core, Q-O-R, watercolor paints. That's what's in my palette. And then I purchased these as tube paints and I put them in this palette specifically. So they don't come like this in a palette. They come in a box of tubes. And then this palette itself is also linked. The metal tin part with all of the little wells in it is linked in the description as well. Then I have water, my paper towel, and I think we're good to go. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to be doing, I think like 3 little vignettes. So these little, we've done these before, like where we've done swatches and then done ink and wash on them. Kind of a similar idea where I'm going to be doing just little swatches, but building in little tiny landscapes within them. Landscapes can be very intimidating to some, and doing a big landscape, even though at their simplest core, all landscapes are ground, sky, ground, sky. There's a horizon line somewhere in there, and then you add details. But we're going to keep it really small, and I have no idea how this is going to come out. I've never done it before, but I think in my imagination, it will be fabulous. All right, so colors. All of the colors in my palette are listed in the description. So if you don't know how to spell something that I pronounce, it will be in the description. You'll be able to find it. And I'll just tell you the colors I'm going to be using as I'm using them. So the first color I'm going to use is green gold. Let me just clean out this green and purple here from our last project. Look at that. Sap green and purple, as you just saw, mixed together make a lovely gray color. Just FYI. All right, so let's pull out green gold. Green gold is a super vibrant green yellow color. And I'm going to be putting down my lightest colors first. So just follow me along. Okay, we're going to do 3 of these. So I'm just putting down a big kind of blob of color. It's like a window into another world. So we're going to do 1 there. Ooh, I don't know if we'll get 3. I guess I will. All right, and then I'm going to do a cobalt teal as 1. So these are going to lay the foundation. So it'll be the brightest part of the sky in the landscape, and then I'm going to build details on top of them. And hopefully it all goes according to plan. So cobalt teal is this really nice light color. If you don't have a cobalt teal and you just want to replace it with some kind of blue, a very light watered down phthalo blue could be lovely and beautiful, or cobalt blue. It'll just give you a slightly different kind of look and feel. These 2 colors I just love next to each other. They're so springy and like just feel warm and spring-like. So you can see I added lots of water, dropping in some color, nice organic edges. Drop it a little. Ooh, that's probably a little more than I wanted, but so I just have a clean brush now, just pulling out a little bit of color where it got a little too intense, but I think that's fine. All right, so now our third one, I think I'm going to go with a green again, but we'll do sap green. So a darker kind of more moodier. Maybe we'll do sap green with a little phthalo blue, because I think that'll give us just a darker, richer, kind of moodier one. But I'm trying to decide, do I want just sap green? Sap green is a little bit warmer, so it's a warmer green. It's got some yellow undertones to it. So I'm trying to decide, do I want to cool it down with a little phthalo blue? I guess I will. I guess that's where we're going. Okay. And then lighten it up again as well. It needs to be light because, again, we're going to be putting lots of things on top of this. This is kind of like the background. Even okay, there are 3 little vignettes. So these are going to serve as our frames, and then inside them we're going to build in more details of some additional landscapes. So let's let those dry and then get started. All right, we're back, and they're all nice and dry. They're pretty dry, double checking. All right, so I am going to move to a smaller brush, my Velvet Touch size 4 round brush. And we're going to start, I think, on this lightest one here, and we'll work our way this way. So I want to create kind of a dappled light forest scene here, having this color, this bright color, be the sunshine kind of coming through the trees. So what I'm going to do is, one, I'm going to create a ground line. So I'm going to use some raw umber, and I have some burnt sienna in here too. Just happened to be in my palette, but you can just use raw umber. Just using whatever's in here. A brown color. And I want it to be nice and light. And I am just going to add this kind of on top of here. And just basically adding a nice light brown wash to the bottom here. Some lighter areas, some darker areas. And we're going to put some trees and things in the way. They're going to cast some shadows, but this will be like our forest floor. And it's going to kind of come to a point a little bit. So it's like receding into the background. It has a little bit of a vanishing point. There we go. Just pulling out a little color, a little water. Okay. And then I'm going to go in with some darker color while it's still a little wet. I'm going to put some back here on the edge. There's going to be a little bit of a forest path kind of coming through here. And then these areas back here are going to have more shrubbery and bushes and trees and things, but it's just going to be a little darker. Perfect. And working at these smaller sizes, you can really just kind of be very sketchy, like putting things in place, kind of mapping things out. All right, I'm going to take some green now, and we're going to put some green down here. And this is all wet on wet to be some foliage kind of at the front of our scene. We're definitely going to add some more stuff later. All right, so some green down there. So now we have like a little forest path, a little greenery in the front, which we're going to come back to for some shadows and some darker areas along the edges. So let's get into building in some greenery up here. So sap green, this sap green and phthalo mixture. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do some darker green gold first. So I'm going to go back to my green gold, but a little more hyper concentrated. And I am going to just stipple in. These are going to be the edges of trees and like our canopy. And these are sun-kissed. Okay. So the sun is coming through. We're going to leave this center open. And where I'm going with this is these edges are going to be really dark, and we're just going to see lots of sun right in the middle. I hope this isn't getting away from you. Or me. Ooh. All right, so now I'm going to bring in some of this darker green, and we're going to start layering the edges. You can definitely leave some spots where you can kind of see through, that you don't have to cover everything up. And then don't worry, we're going to put in our, so these are the tops of trees. And we're going to put in the trunks momentarily. And you can put in the trunks first. Some people prefer to do that. All right. I'm going to let, am I going to let this dry? I think I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to take my brush. I'm just going to kind of blend these out a little lighter on the edges. And it looks kind of weird right now. It's okay. It will kind of come together soon once you put the trunks in there. So let's let that dry. And I'm going to start thinking about this one and what this is going to look like. So this has set up a very nice sky for us. I'm just thinking if you're going to get lost, if I skip to this one, let's let this one dry and I'll go back to it and we'll finish this one first before we jump to the next one. As you're painting, if you don't want to let things dry, you definitely can like work on these while you're letting this dry and mix and match your the scenes. You don't have to paint them all in order, but for the sake of clarity in the video, I think I am going to paint them in order and focus just on one. So hopefully that's helpful. So I'm going to let this dry. We'll come back and I'll finish it up. All right, we're back and this one is dry. So we're going to come back in with our trunks. We're going to have a variety of darker and lighter versions to communicate sunshine. So, excuse me, I'm going to start with raw umber, which is this dark brown color. And I'm going to put a really strong tree right in front here. That's like in front of all the foliage. It's taller than everything we see, so we almost don't even see any foliage on it. And it's going to be right in the foreground. We'll put a shadow off of it and some more detailed kind of forest floor stuff after we're done. Okay, so now I'm going to take that similar color. I'm going to add a little burnt sienna, which is a reddish brown. Could also just add a little yellow to it. Like I have a Diarylide yellow, which is a very warm yellow, just to lighten it up and make it a little more golden. And I want it to be lighter. And then the trees back here, they're going to be a little further away and they're going to be a little bit more bright because the sun is catching them. And we'll add another one back here. I'm probably going to have to go a little bit darker with some of them and some details. But the further away we get from the viewer, the kind of lighter they get. They could still be this cooler brown color, just a lighter version of it. Maybe the sun is not hitting them so much, but they're still like a cooler, darker color. This one here, I'm going to make a little darker because it's not going to be so much in the sunshine. And maybe one on the edge over here. Making it just nice and dark. There we go. And then we see all the way through to the sun in the background. Now what's going to make this really pop are some shadows. So let's do some shadows. So I'm going to go back to my green, my sap green. I'm going to add a little Payne's gray to it to darken it up, really desaturate it, make it a nice olive dark green. And I'm going to start to create shadows in this direction. So the sun is behind, but they are pushing shadows across the forest floor. You want your shadows to kind of all go in the same direction. And then we can even put in some of the canopy casting a shadow in various places. But see how, like, I'm not really getting into tiny details. I'm just worrying about where's my light, where's my shadows. Let's put in some foreground and some background. And at this smaller scale, there's really no room. Well, there is if you really want there to be, but you don't have to fret about all the tiny details and anything realism. Just work with light, learn about your light, learn about the composition. So now I'm just putting on some of that darker green over top of some of these areas, not all. I'm definitely going to put some down here. Kind of in this side. This side is going to be the darkest. Build up some like bushes. There we go. Something seems off about this. I feel like I have to connect this. That we can't just have a fully open to the sky area. And I feel like that very top has to be super dark right here. And I'm going to throw a few more light leaves through here. That feels better. And then even over here, I feel like there could be a little bit more something. Yeah, like light colored bushes along the horizon line. There we go. Beautiful. Tiny little forest scene. I love it. All right, so we're done with that one. And now we're going to move on to this one. All right, so now we're going to move on to this next one. And let's see, what are we going to paint in here? I think we're going to do something obviously brighter, a little lighter. Maybe let's do a flower garden. So I am going to start out with some Quinacridone Magenta. I wonder if you guys can hear the water running in the background. Like the main pipe to the house runs through my studio. And someone is taking a shower right now, so I can hear it. All right, so we are going to, I'm going to create a nice light pink here with my Quinacridone Magenta. And I'm going to start by, I'm going to create like a rhododendron or some other kind of flowering bush over here. So I'm just going to pop in just stippling my way through. So you can see there's just lots of little, and I did it on the lighter side here because obviously watercolor is transparent, so it's going to interact with whatever's underneath it. So if I did it on the darker side, the pink would be very purple. All right, so let's get some sap green going here. And I am going to just start to work around my magenta. Again, keeping it simple. Let's not overcomplicate things. These could be just used for working out composition, working out colors. They could be very sweet little vignettes all on their own. So the greenery of our bush, putting that in. And now I'm going to make it a little darker in some spots, dropping in some darker color wet on wet. And then over on this side, maybe we'll put in something that is kind of like a short little hedgerow. And we're going to come all the way down to the bottom here. And I think I'll put some kind of detailed thing along the bottom here in a minute after that dries, some darker green color. All right, so we have like a nice little bush over here, something that resembles a little planting of like a hedgerow back here that goes straight across the back. What else could we put in here? We could put another tree. So if we wanted to use our brown here to create like a tree in the background. So we're only going to kind of see the trunk of this, and then we'll have it go all the way up and kind of out of the frame. But then some of its branches will go out this way. And this is where we'll see our greenery on this side. Let's use some of that bright green gold again. So kind of framing from both sides, down here with the heavier and up in this corner. And then, you know, we could put some kind of building in the background. I'm just thinking. All right, I'm going to leave lots of peekaboo space of the blue to come through. And then let's use that tiny little detail craft brush here. I'm going to pick up some of my darker brown. Then I'm just going to put some branches kind of, oh, I need to go a little darker. Branches peeking through some of these openings here. Just to connect everything. There we go. All right, so what do we want to do? I want to do something like in the far background. I'm going to use just some Payne's Gray. It's a really bright sunny day, so a silhouette doesn't really make sense. But we use some Payne's Gray. I lightened it up, mixed it into this little Cobalt Teal a little bit. But I'm just going to put something like in the far background, like kind of like maybe a church steeple. That. Here's the rest of the church. Put some other kind of little there we go. Just something building like back there. It could be the top of a roof, it could be the building itself. It looks great. All right. And then we can put even some little birdies in the sky. Some little V shapes flying through. And then the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plop in just a few more dabs of darker magenta in a few spots to make this pop here. and dark sap green, a little Payne's gray. I'm going to do just a little bit of wild greenery in front here. There we go. All right, number 2 is done as well. Oh, this is probably going to be a long video. All right, so we're going to move on to number 3 and think about another little vignette of a landscape. All right, so now we're going to move on to this next one. And let's see, what are we going to paint in here? I think we're going to do something obviously brighter, a little lighter. Maybe let's do a flower garden. So I am going to start out with some Quinacridone Magenta. I wonder if you guys can hear the water running in the background. Like the main pipe to the house runs through my studio, and someone is taking a shower right now, so I can hear it. All right, so we are going to, I'm going to create a nice light pink here with my Quinacridone Magenta. And I'm going to start by, I'm going to create like a rhododendron or some other kind of flowering bush over here. So I'm just going to pop in, just stippling my way through. So you can see there's just lots of little, and I did it on the lighter side here because obviously watercolor is transparent, so it's going to interact with whatever's underneath it. So if I did it on the darker side, the pink would be very purple. All right, so let's get some sap green going here. And I am going to just start to work around my magenta. Again, keeping it simple. Let's not overcomplicate things. These could be just used for working out composition, working out colors. They could be very sweet little vignettes all on their own. So the greenery of our bush, putting that in. And now I'm going to make it a little darker in some spots. Dropping in some darker color wet on wet. And then over on this side, maybe we'll put in something that is kind of like a short little hedgerow. And we're going to come all the way down to the bottom here. And I think I'll put some kind of detailed thing along the bottom here in a minute after that dries, some darker green color. All right, so we have like a nice little bush over here, something that resembles a little planting of like a hedgerow back here that goes straight across the back. What else could we put in here? We could put another tree. So if we wanted to use our brown here to create like a tree in the background. So we're only going to kind of see the trunk of this, and then we'll have it go all the way up and kind of out of the frame. But then some of its branches will go out this way. And this is where we'll see our greenery on this side. Let's use some of that bright green gold again. So kind of framing from both sides, down here with the heavier and up in this corner. And then, you know, we could put some kind of building in the background. I'm just thinking. All right, I'm going to leave lots of peekaboo space of the blue to come through. And then let's use that tiny little detail craft brush here. I'm going to pick up some of my darker brown. Then I'm just going to put some branches kind of, oh, I need to go a little darker. Branches peeking through some of these openings here. Just to connect everything. There we go. All right, so what do we want to do? I want to do something like in the far background. I'm going to use just some Payne's Gray. It's a really bright sunny day, so a silhouette doesn't really make sense. I'm going to use some Payne's Gray. I lightened it up, mixed it into this little Cobalt Teal a little bit. But I'm just going to put something like in the far background, like kind of like a, maybe a church steeple. That. Here's the rest of the church. Put some other kind of little, there we go. Just something building like back there. It could be the top of a roof. It could be the building itself. It looks great. All right. And then we can put even some little birdies in the sky. Some little V shapes flying through. And then the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plop in just a few more dabs of darker magenta in a few spots to make this pop here. And dark sap green, a little Payne's Gray. I'm going to do just a little bit of wild greenery in front here. There we go. All right, number 2 is done as well. Oh, this is probably going to be a long video. All right, so we're going to move on to number 3 and think about another little vignette of a landscape. All right, we're down to our last one, and this one is that nice cool green background. So I do feel like it has to be foresty in a sense. So I'm going to do some purple, I don't know, lavender, like forest lavender. I don't know if that's a thing, but I'm going to make it purple and green, and we're going to do basically I'm just going to take my brush and dot my purple. Actually, let's lighten it up a little bit so that I have a chance to build in some contrast. I'm just going to dot in lots of purple little clusters. Now, it doesn't look like much right now, but I hope it is. Let's dot in some darker color. All right, now we're going to go into green, but I do want that cooler green color. So phthalo blue and sap green together, or if you have like a Viridian green, I don't particularly care for the Viridian green in the core paints. I prefer just mixing a cool green color. But there are lots of cool green colors already out in palettes that, you know, you don't have to mix. So if you have one of those, feel free to use it. You don't have to mix. But I do encourage mixing. All right, so a nice little purple and green kind of forest feel. I am going to put some trees. I am going to put... I'm trying to decide if I want like a full canopy and that you can see through to it, or if really this has to all be dark forest background, which I think it does. So we're going to go super dark green here. This one might get a little muddled. We'll see. I'm actually going to add in some Payne's gray with my sap green to make it even darker. And then up here, we're going to go a little bit lighter for the canopy of the trees. So just swatching that in. So basically this part is a little closer to us and it's going to be a little bit lighter. This part is much further away and kind of deep in the forest. So I'm going to go super dark, and I'm hoping this is going to work out. But that's why we do it in our sketchbooks, because if it doesn't, that's okay. I learned that is not the way I would have painted this in the future. Because then after I do this kind of dark piece, I'm going to go in with our dark brown. So this is raw umber and Payne's gray, so super dark. And I probably should wait for this to dry, and then I'm going to be putting in trees. Okay, so let that dry, and I'm going to be putting in trees and tree branches to kind of make this a nice little dark forest with our purple little forest lavender, I guess I'm calling it right now, but I have no idea. All right, let's let that dry. All right, we're back one final time to add in some more details, and we are going to tackle just some details in here, and our goal is to make this part in the middle feel like it's receding back and kind of a dark, deep forest, and these two parts as if they're a little closer to us, a little lighter, a little brighter. So we're going to add in some tree trunks. First, we're going to add in some darker ones, and they're actually going to be further along in the background. This is a little raw umber and Payne's gray, so it's very dark brown. And we are going to put in these darker ones. They're going to go all the way up to the back of the canopy. And we are going to put some slightly lighter ones, and we'll make these kind of thinner. And you can see I'm putting in some secondary branches and things like that as well. Okay, so those are dark, deep in the woods. Now let's do a slightly lighter color. So I'm going to go back to my raw umber, but just mix it here. I don't know if you can see on the side the difference. It's a little bit lighter. I'm going to add a little bit more water to it. Has no Payne's gray in it. And these I'm going to put a few that kind of disappear into our lavender here. Make them a little bigger and a little thicker. And maybe one like right down here. The only problem is because they are in the foreground, I do have to make them dark enough that you can't see through to the purple behind them. So the trunks have to be thick enough and dark enough that it covers up. There we go. So these are kind of coming forward, and now we have this purple foresty stuff around them. So let's go back and add a few more details to the top and the bottom. So I'm going to add in just a few more bits of darker purple just to give some contrast. So this is Dioxazine purple. Definitely make sure some of the darker bits are further back in that deep dark forest. But even in the foreground a little bit, a few spots. And again, building contrast builds interest. When it's not intentional, there's nothing worse than a super flat, like everything is the same value, even though different colors, but if it's all kind of that same middle value, it looks a little blah. Okay, perfect. So this top here needs a little more contrast as well. So I am going to use a little bit darker green, but I'm not going to put it everywhere, just in a few spots. Again, just to show that there's depth and kind of movement through these trees. There's lots of things recessed and pulling out and light and shadow. But I'm not getting too carried away with the details. There we go. I think that works. I think it works very nicely. So we have our nice little forest glen. This one is definitely like dark and deep, and I really love that. It is hard to not get too dark and too muddied. So you do have to be careful to leave in some of these lighter white spots to create that contrast, so you can see the edges of shapes and things like that. This one's a lot of fun. I'm just going to add one more layer to this tree. I think it got too light as it dried. So I'm just going to give that trunk a little bit more of a pop. And there. And then maybe actually add just a few darker tones of green into this into these yellowy leaf branches. Again, creating some visual contrast. But still letting things be light and bright and airy. All right, I think we're done with our three little forest vignettes. This was definitely a little bit longer of a video. I hope you found this helpful and inspiring to do your own, to take it small. You don't have to paint a full page. And really we were concentrating on light and shadow and composition, where things were, but everything was just little stipples, little tiny stipples of different colors, and paying attention to where we left things alone to let light come through. Okay, little white spots all throughout to give that little dappled look. Variations in color, things way in the background might be darker or lighter depending on the type of landscape. So anyway, I hope this was helpful and fun. I really enjoyed it. I think they look great together as a triptych piece. Don't forget to check out the description for links to all my supplies and materials, the ones you saw in this video, as well as other supplies that I use on a regular basis, like kneaded erasers, my heat gun, other papers I use outside of my sketchbook, so on and so forth, lots of different brushes. Don't forget to leave a comment if you'd like. I love to hear from y'all and how you are progressing on your own journey, what you like and what you wish I did differently. And also share this with a friend who you think might enjoy it as well, or save it for later. If you're not going to do it right now, you can always save it in your YouTube list for later on. All right, y'all, thank you so much for painting with me. I'm Shayna Cersei, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.